Today we're in habit 5, seek first to understand, then to be understood. Kind of like that conversation we had going about taxes and everything. So I'm really trying to practice these 7 habits to really be listening to what, like you were saying, Tom, to understand what you're saying, what's going on with the tax laws. How can I apply it and such.
And Danny, also to listen to them, their personal situation.
Yeah, exactly.
There's always
really understand. Understand not just what they're saying, but where they're coming from, the environment that they're coming from.
Right. So I had a gentleman call me just for this. He was referred, and quick question. Military going to be PCS. Here's the deal. He's owned the house for 18 months. He can sell it for a gain of, you ready? $400,000. What about tax? I said, sir, I don't know you, but bird in hand. He goes, oh. I said, I'm not a greedy person, but you're telling me you got a $400,000 gain in less than 2 years. Yes, sir. Well, you need to talk to your realtor because it may be time to just pull the trigger and write the check.
Yep.
But I didn't, it's his perspective because I said, are you military or something? Oh, yeah. Then he told me. Okay. So, he's hopping around all over the place. He didn't control where he lives. So
you have to listen for 2 years to not have capital gains, right? On the house.
See, he's moved so often. He's already done one in the 2-year period. He gets one every 2 years. So he's like, we can't meet the 2-year requirement until August. I said, maybe it's worth more or less. That is not my expertise, but I can tell you 400,000 is a real deal. It's really popular.
How do you make 400,000 in 18 months?
I mean, he's like I said, how big's the game? He kind of 400,000. I said, seriously? Yeah.
I know somebody in Lakeway that bought a house August of 2020, so a year and a half ago, paid $600 for it, did a HELOC loan last week to bring for some improvements, new decking and stuff. It came back at $895.
Right.
$300,000 increase.
Well, Danny, my neighborhood, it's starter homes, right? Supposed to be. Okay. So back behind us is this new acre lot subdivision. There's already 2 listings in Bonnet that are over $1 million offered for $1 million. I'm like, are you kidding me?
Backing up to yours. So, guys, hey, Beth.
Hello.
So, what's intrigued me going through this book this time, there's been a few things that have intrigued me. One is, we got the chapter title, Habit 5, seek first to understand, then to be understood, or that's the habit. But then the chapter starts off with principles of empathetic communication. Talks about character, empathetic listening, diagnose before you prescribe, autobiographical responses, understanding and perception. Then it's all of that. Then seek to be understood. At the end of each chapter, the son, Stephen Covey, not Dr. R. Covey, writes something entitled New Insights. And at the end of this last chapter, he says, so think win-win. Balance what you want with what others want. Be courageous and considerate. Think win-win at home with your spouse, partner, or teenager. Practice it at work with your boss, direct reports, and colleagues. Live it with your suppliers, partners, vendors, and customers. If you find this hard to do, go back to habits 1, 2, and 3. Clarify your motives and win a personal victory first. This will give you the strength to start thinking win-win. So for me, as I come into this chapter, seeking first to understand and then be understood, I do start wondering, how well am I doing in habits 1, 2, and 3? As I've been really working on practicing this, I found myself, okay, like last week was in win-win. Over the weekend, a couple of days ago, was in working win-win or no deal. And I'm going, oh, I can't do that. And I realized I'm not strong enough to do it. So I had to go back and started reading through the first 3 habits to get a grip to then move, into that. And as he says, this will give you the strength to start thinking win-win. Before we can really practice win-win, we have to be thinking it correctly, right? So out of this, just kind of look through, if you got the book there, the beginning of the Habit 5 chapter. What stands out at you?
Danny, I think to first understand means empathetic. That's a hard thing to put on the front of your brain when you're trying to be understood before you understand, right? So you lead with your mouth instead of your brain. So I kind of got my attention that's really based on having an empathetic toward whatever you're receiving, right? Or what you're trying to understand.
Yeah. I already have a friend in Ohio, which is an old saying, but his dad would use it on him. You've got 2 ears and 1 mouth. Use them in that proportion. I mean, I guess as a kid, he talked all the time. It's like, okay. So it is hard because I think my toughest one is when the communication styles don't match. And maybe it's how they work. But yeah, if there's not empathy, I think you're talking to each other. You're not listening and learning.
Yeah, I had somebody that I called to check in with one day last week. He wanted to meet for lunch to get some advice. Let me know what he was wanted the advice about. Mentioned a specific subject. I said, sure, let's meet. If you come up my way, and we ended up meeting at Rudy's yesterday. And I got there and I thought about this chapter. Seek first to understand. So I started asking him some questions about, and he started off with, so what do you think? And I thought, seek first to understand. And guys, what he asked, when it took me a few minutes asking him some questions, when I understood what he wanted advice on, it was not totally, but much different than what I thought he wanted advice on. I love what he says here. Go ahead, Paul.
Oh, I was just going to say, because we had actually a webinar yesterday about hiring, and one of the guys mentioned something about it's one thing that helped him, because it was specifically about Goosehead agents, because of course there's corporate people work for Goosehead, but there's also Goosehead agents about hiring the proper candidates and things like that. But one thing one of the guys that's a hiring manager for who hires the corporate people said is, he likes to explain what the job is and then ask the person to tell them what they think, what the job is, which is a little bit kind of the same way, but also it's one of those things, seek first not to understand, but I mean, to understand, not to be understood. But if on that, I really kicked that in my head because there's a lot of times you can tell people all day long, kind of like what you mentioned, what you thought they were going to talk to you about is not even anywhere close to what they're going to talk to you about. But it's like, you know, what you say and what they hear is two completely different things. And if you, and by doing that, I think that'd be really helpful when it comes to making sure people understand what you're actually looking for. That way everybody's on the same page. So.
Yeah, that's, you know, that's a great point, Paul. I like using personality assessments in the hiring process. Got to be a little bit careful about it, but mainly all I do is have them take an assessment and have them agree or disagree with what the assessment says about them, so that when they start acting differently than their assessment, I can say, no, wait a minute. You're acting different what I'm seeing here, and you agreed, and have them underline what is absolutely you in this assessment. And had a client one time in my side gig that I had, that we used this assessment to, in the process for hiring a new salesperson. About 2 weeks into it, she called me up. She said, he's nothing like what we thought. So I went over, we sat down with him, and he goes, well, what I didn't tell you, from the time I started this, that I accepted this job, gave a notice, 2-week notice, and then a week before I come here, there's a 3-week period, my wife left me. So he was acting totally different, just because, you know, his wife had left him. And but we wanted to understand what was going on in his life. Well, why was he different? We had something to bench it off of.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. What do you think about this? People are constantly, this is on page 270, this is under empathetic listening, my page 277. They're constantly projecting their own home movies into other people's behavior. They prescribe their own glasses for everyone with whom they interact. Most people do not listen with the intent to understand. They listen with the intent to reply. They're either speaking or preparing to speak. They're filtering everything through their own paradigm, reading their autobiography into people's lives.
So, Danny, I think I did a study at one time on communication. I think I remember that the odds are 2 to 1. That when somebody says something to you, you're interpreting what they're saying based on your own experiences and what you are inside. And so you may totally have missed. And that's common. In other words, that 2 to 1 study that's the normal thing. So yeah, so that makes total sense. But
Yeah. And you know, we all have this, we have a world view. We have a view of how we look at the world. And
well, we also have our own assumptions.
yep.
We bring our biases, good and bad, to the table, but we have our own set of assumptions based on past experiences, I think, and probably more. I don't know if they still do it or not, but supposedly when Jeff Bezos was running, running Amazon, they start every meeting with complete silence for about 30 minutes. They read the memos before they even said anything. Now, can you imagine how many people were just, when they started to work there, was it 30 minutes up? I mean, that's really, and by the way, no PowerPoints. So that's 2 of his things. So, understand each other's frame of reference. Maybe that's what all these personality profiles are. I have some real heartburn. People getting pegged with personality real heartburn.
Yeah. You gotta be careful with it. You have to be very, very careful with it.
But Danny, HR people are not careful.
Yeah, they're not. And have you ever talked to Brian about the Enneagram? Yeah, ask Brian what he thinks about the Enneagram. And if you're not familiar with that, it really puts you in a small box. But
I mean, you can go Myers-Briggs, Strength Finder, just fill in the, I don't care, whichever one. But you know, there's a bias of the group that created it.
yeah,
I mean,
well,
Strength Finders are created
yeah.
by a media firm. I mean, you know,
Yeah.
there's some real bias there.
Yeah.
But you got a lot of nonprofits, they swear by it. Strength Finder, we got to cover. Boom, look at this. You don't fit. Next.
yeah. And I mean, like, you know, Austin interviewed for my son interviewed for a sales manager job, got solicited by a company about 5 years ago. I know him real well, know the owner, and he had Austin do a DISC assessment. A DISC assessment should never be used as part of the hiring process. Never, 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 never. Well, Austin tests out as an IS, an influencing but steady. And this firm that is that they're connected to a very large real estate firm.
Mhm.
They claim that the best realtors are DIs, you know, dominant, influencing. And Austin didn't get hired because he was an IS. I mean, Austin's one of the, you know, I'm bragging here, but one of the best sales managers. That's why we moved him in this move we did last year. We moved him into a non-producing role so that he is a rainmaker. He's there to help the salespeople go out on appointments and drive them. And I talked to that owner a couple of years later. He and I ended up having coffee one day, and I asked him about that, and he keeps running through sales managers and salespeople. And I said, your profile's messed up. What you're hiring against is all jacked up. And it's good for realtor salespeople, maybe the DIs, but you're missing a lot of the ISs. And I mean, some of the best loan officers and realtors I know are ISs. I mean, they're incredible. So anyway, yeah, I agree with you. You know, I'm most of those show me as a extrovert, but there's one that showed me years ago that I'm a task-oriented extrovert. If you saw what I posted on Facebook the last couple of days, that was pure. There's 8 questions there about this. Somebody is labeled as an extrovert, but yet there's 8 things that I answered yes to every one of those. That is me. I'm an extrovert, but before I go to a networking meeting, I want to know one of you guys or somebody else I know is going to be at that networking meeting. I'm not going. I don't want to walk into a networking meeting. That's and just start meeting people. That's not a true extrovert. I will do it. So, what are you grinning at, Paul?
Oh, I agree. It's nice to have friendly faces when you go to a networking group.
Yeah. I'm kind of like Scott Carney. I want to hire a wingman. Yeah.
Well, hey, Danny, I used to go to networking, and a buddy would team up and tag team people. Hey, Danny, meet. Okay.
Yeah. Have
John,
a wingman.
Boom, walk on the
Wingman.
next one. We come out and go, okay, and then compare notes. And he could sell.
Yeah, we're not like, yeah, exactly. Yeah, we're not all like Beth.
Right. And
There, Beth?
yeah, but John just had like he
Yeah,
loved talking
right.
to people, you know. So I wasn't there to collect business cards, but he was great. It's a great team. Yeah.
You know, here we may practice. He says when another person speaks, we're usually listening at 1 of 4 levels: ignoring, pretending, selective listening, or attentive listening. But very few of us ever practice the 5th level, the highest form of listening, which is empathetic listening. When I say empathetic listening, I'm referring to the techniques of active or reflective listening, which basically involves mimicking what the other person says. That kind of listening is skill-based, truncated through character and relationships, and often insults those listened to in such a way. It is also essentially autobiographical. If you practice these techniques, you may not project your autobiography in the actual interaction. So he goes on down. So there he was saying that, so let me skip through that. When I say empathetic listening, I'm not referring to the techniques of active or reflective, which basically involves mimicking. When I say, so I'm going to jump down to the next paragraph. When I say empathetic listening, I mean listening with the intent to understand. I think about it as I read a book. One of the guys on my team suggested the book last week because what we're doing with our sales training. He suggested the book Atomic Habits. I thought I'd read it, went back and looked. I've had it since 17. That's when I bought it. And turns out I've read, you got it, Paul? And
yeah, I have. And I think I read the first chapter and I got onto something else.
And I've read some reviews. I've read some summaries. So I thought habits. I've read so many books about habits. So I decided, okay, that, you know what, I'm going to start listening to the book. Got it on Audible. And ahead of time, everybody's heard me say this. It's a sign of an intelligent mind or an educated person that can entertain an author's ideas without having to own them. So literally went into the book with that idea. Beth, have you read that book?
Yes, I have. And in fact, the title made me think, I didn't know anything about it, right? It was just recommended by, I think, David King, fitness guy. And I thought atomic meant like blowing up big, right? Explosion. No, it meant minuscule, like molecular
little bitty changes. Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, I can actually do that. So I actually really liked the book a lot. And I get a weekly update from them.
Yeah,
so,
guys, I started this last Thursday. Been listening to it on my walks. The gym. Had to go to McGregor to a funeral on Saturday. Listened to it with my wife on the way up there, on the way back. Have signed up for his. He has a series of emails that teach you some habits. I posted it in the 4 Pillars Facebook site. If you've seen it on there, it's a game changer.
He also has the best. He says it's like the shortest email on your news feed, whatever, in your inbox, because he does this thing called 3, 2, 1. And he has 3 short ideas, 2 quotes from other people, and then 1 question. And they come out every Thursday, and they just blow my mind. They're so good.
Yeah. Well, that's a big explosion.
Yeah. By the way, I was just going to say, I'm leaving for Miami Beach tomorrow. I'm 67 years old, going to spring break, right? We're having a national launch meeting at the Fontainebleau at Miami Beach. I'm like, what the heck? St. Patrick's Day, the whole thing. I mean, they're crazy. They're out of their mind. But we're having one day at the beach, so I'm headed to get my nails done. So I'm in the car. I have a 2:30 appointment. I'm a little late, but those ladies will still take me in. But I'm going to try to just listen with my ear pods, but I'm probably not going to contribute. Thank you.
Okay. Well, thanks for being here. Hey, by the way, give Terry my email address and ask her to email me so I have hers.
I certainly will. She had her mother-in-law pass away, so I know she's been super busy.
Oh my goodness. Sorry about that.
So that's, I think, why I know she's in Cleveland this week. So I don't know what's going on, but I will definitely make sure that you get on her. Yeah. I can even she doesn't care. I can send it to you.
Okay. So, okay. Well, good.
Yeah.
I had it at one
Thanks.
time. You referred it to me. We talked about a mortgage loan at one time,
Yeah.
but it's disappeared.
And she has a master's degree in organizational development.
Yeah,
She's
she
just
mentioned that one day. That blew my
really
mind.
sharp.
It was a small
Yeah.
explosion. So
Yeah.
so anyway,
Oh,
guys.
that was another atomic explosion. Bye
Yeah,
bye.
yeah, it was an atomic explosion, minute. Yeah. So this whole area about the empathetic listening, and I've always thought of empathy. Sympathy is getting down in a hole with somebody. Empathy is reaching down and helping them out of their hole. And he says here, empathy is not sympathy.
Right.
Sympathy is a form of agreement, a form of judgment. Empathetic listening involves much more than just registering, reflecting, or even understanding the words that are said. So he has some really good stuff here that empathetic listening is so powerful because it gives you accurate data to work with. And too many times, that's why, you've all heard me tell the story about my wife and I was practicing this. I was trying to get out. Okay, what if I did want to do something? What if I did, and this was 20 years ago. I told her, I said to her, babe, what would you ever consider? Nope. I said, okay, listen to me. Would you ever consider going? Nope. Babe, please let me finish. We went through 3 or 4 more of those, seriously. And I finally got it all out. Would you ever consider going to Russia on a mission trip? And she says, are you kidding me? No. And I said, what if you did? She said, what if I did what? What if you did want to go? I don't. So we went through that a little bit till I finally, when you work through that, what if you did, what would that be like? And, it kind of changes the perspective as you walk through that. And some of y'all seen I've taken it down on one of my main sites lately, but I had that little caption up above my face. What if you did? And but she turned it around on me one time. She said, hey, you want to go to the mall with me? And I went, no. What if you did? and you know what? And I've done that before. I've done it where, okay, I did it a couple of weeks ago. Austin's headed to Colorado and he wants me to dog sit. His mother and I had a dog sit for 4 nights. And I'm kind of like, didn't want to do it. Didn't want to do it at all. But
what if you did?
What if I did? If I did want to do it, I would smile, I'd be joyous and kind of work myself back through some of that. I've got something going on right now that I don't want to deal with, but I'm working through what if I did? And it puts a different flavor on everything. And it takes away the judgment, takes away from just seeing it through my eyes and what he calls how did you say that? Autobiographical?
Danny, can we spend another moment on that? So,
yeah.
Sometimes that's hard. I mean, I think it's hard, period. Put yourself in someone else's shoes. Number one, they frame the question. And number two, if it's not on what about a mission trip to Russia? Not on her list, couldn't even think of it. You finally got her to think about that. What did you gain from that when she flipped the question? You want to go to the mall with me? What'd you gain?
You know what? I started thinking, okay, what if I did want to go to the mall? And guys, I've got a lot of examples of this. I mean, I do it going to networking meetings, and I do it on a regular basis. So it was literally this. What if I did want? So she said, what if you did? And I said, but I don't. She said, but what if you did? And I said, if I did. So I went right straight into it. If I did, I'd be happy about it. If I did, I'm thinking about what my activity be. I said, what do you mean, walk around with you all the time? She says, well, I'd like for you to. I said, can I sit down every once in a while? Now, this is before we had books on our phone. So I said, I'm thinking, what if I did? Well, I could read somewhere. I said, can I take a book with me? She says, if you must. And I said, I'd really like to take a book with me. she said, okay. And so I took a book and I ended up sitting out here at Lakeline Mall on a bench while she was in and out of stores. And then I would move through the mall with her at different stages. And, it was a great day. But when you practice that, and I've done it with coaching, there's the true style of coaching that I learned about 7 or 8 years ago is this. And, I'm trying to help. It's not about what I think. It's not about leading somebody or training somebody. It's about getting people to understand what they're thinking and even changing their thoughts. There's one technique where, we say, in this case around going to the mall, well, if you did want to go to the mall, what would you enjoy? And you say something, then you say, what else? Then you say, what else? And every time they answer something, you say, what else? And just keep digging deeper into your unconsciousness to come up with more reasons and stuff. And maybe you start thinking about, well, I was thinking about buying a new pair of socks, well, I wonder, I've been wanting a new belt. My belt's kind of wore out. And you just kind of keep working through that process.
Yeah. Good. Thank you.
Is diagnosed before prescribed. Although it's risky and hard, seek first to understand or diagnose before you subscribe is a correct principle manifest in many areas of life. It's the mark of true professionals. I'll say this. I was in a group last week. Paul was in that group last week, and I had a hard time. There were about 6 of us in the group, Paul, that last Tuesday morning. And somebody said something about books, and and I don't understand. And I've sought to understand it, but I don't understand that people that don't read books and they don't listen to a book or listen to a good podcast that's not a bunch of jibber jabber, and they're trying to succeed in the world. We're not going to succeed. Now, this is pretty strong statement, but nobody's going to succeed unless they grow. They might obtain a goal and never grow in obtaining that goal, but it won't be sustainable. When they don't reach that goal, how they handle that they might grow through the process. And then when they reset the goal, if that's what they do, I believe that you set a goal, you put a timetable on it in a plan, you keep the goal out there. But people, I that's one that I can't get over is people that are working their butt off in business and they're not trying to grow.
Danny, I quit teaching as an adjunct this year.
Oh, really?
Regroup. And the reason is, when I had students at the graduate level go, here's the question: are we going to read this whole book? It's a graduate level, like eventually, and they were looking at you like you were punishing them, like they were like stunned. And these are working adults. I'm like, how do I get? I don't have a little filter open up and put the funnel in and pour it into it, because the education system has, leading up to that, has set that up as something that they can get past because they showed up and got a trophy. They're trying to get a graduate degree. So I'm out for now. I got to rethink how to do that.
Yeah. And the thing is that our school system teaches people what to think, not how to think.
Right. And so I actually got some, deans call me and go, what are you doing in that class? Teach them to think. That's what you said. Well, but we have to get accreditation. Yeah, you'll get there, but they're not going to leave my class and be stupid because they can think through it. So if you don't want me, no problem. And they're like, well, we got to get accreditation because you want to make student loans. The only reason.
Yep.
That's
oh my gosh. Yeah. Don't get me started there.
That's man. So that the point is,
I'm closing a loan tomorrow where a 60 I'm not sure how it is top of my head. I know he's drawing Social Security, but he has $93,000 in student loans. He's drawing Social Security.
I've got a medical doctor in his 50s that still owes over, you ready? $500,000 in student loan.
That's horrible.
So,
That is, the story in here, we won't go through the whole thing, but there's a story in here that, and it was about, her daughter Jenny was 2 months old. The way I remember it, they were at a stadium. They were at a football game. There's 60,000 people. Their daughter all of a sudden started vomiting and diarrhea. They couldn't get a hold of their doctor. Somebody knew a doctor that was there. They got him on the phone across the field. He said, okay, do this and this and this, and what's your pharmacy? And so they're headed out. And then Dr. Covey says, do you think he realized that Jenny was the daughter was only 2 months old? Did y'all read that story? And said, well, you never told her, did he? Yeah, but I insinuated it. And to come find out, they called him back and he didn't. He said, it's good. The doctor says, oh, I didn't realize that. It's good you call back. I'll change the prescription immediately. I mean, that happens to us so much in life. What is it? We judge ourselves by our intentions. We judge others by their actions. He goes through this. Anybody else besides me also listening to the book?
No.
Yeah, I'm
I have a
listening.
copy of it somewhere. I've read through the summary once after you sent it to me. I read the book before, but it's been a long time ago.
Yeah, I'm also listening to it, and then coming back to reread things that I pick up, in the auditory. This whole thing around autobiographical. There you are.
Okay.
Said we evaluate, which means we either we agree or disagree. We probe, we ask questions, we advise, we give counsel, we interpret, we try to figure people out. But all of that is based only on our own motives, our own experience, our own frame of reference. So think about that. In the autobiographical responses, we listen autobiographically. We tend to respond in one of four ways: evaluate, probe, advise, or interpret. And all of that's based on our own experience, our own logic. Paul, you're not.
Well, Danny, I can tell you, I'm on a brand new team now, and there was one person on the team who was kind of making everybody a little nuts. She was coming across like a school principal, and she would use a tone of voice like, you must do this, you must do that kind of thing. And we're her peers. People were kind of, the buzz would get around. There's 10 of us on the team, right? So I decided I was going to call her. Our boss had been on a team with her before and hired her over. So there must be something going on there. So I decided to just kind of step out of the comfort zone. And I called and just kind of chit-chatted, tried to get to know her. And you know what? It took about 3 or 4 phone calls. And now I just get her more. And then she's also calmed down because she's not having to prove where she is in the pecking order of the group, so to speak. I think she was trying to make sure people knew she would be top dog. And now she understands we're a group of peers. It was really interesting.
Yeah.
It wasn't 100% empathetic, but it was taking my manager's point of view and deciding there had to be a reason that he wanted her on the team. Just kind of trusting in somebody else's judgment a little bit, not suspending my own. because what
Very
I saw, I
good.
didn't like.
Very
Yeah.
good. Do you know her background? Does she, in her background, was she an authoritative type position like a principal or something?
I don't know the answer to that, but I do know that she was doing this field reimbursement job for Prolia for the last like 4 years. So she, we're on a new project with an asthma drug. So I think she just thought she would be able to just step in and know how to do it immediately. And of course, it's completely different. It doesn't even work the same as far as self-injection and, just how the whole process is different. But she didn't want to own any of that either. So she's an interesting person.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's, remember James Clear in Atomic Habits, he talks about that, how people bring their habits like that. And we don't think of them as habits, but they bring them into a new environment and they're still living out the previous environment.
Exactly what it was.
Yeah. A lot of stuff. And again, Covey really talks a lot about his family, doesn't he? I mean, so much about his family. I think that's what gets some people so bogged down in this book. There's a lot of father, son, daughter interaction. I really had a hard time in this chapter on the 4 biographical responses. I had a really hard time kind of outlining this chapter. Got stuff like what a difference real understanding can make, and then trying to go back and pick out some things to be sure I understood what he was saying about real understanding. He says, all the well-meaning advice in the world won't amount to a hill of beans if you're not even addressing the real problem. We'll never get to the problem if we're so caught up in our own autobiography, our own paradigms, that we don't take off our glasses long enough to see the world from another point of view. And he talks about at other times they really need additional perspective and help. The key is to generally seek the welfare of the individual, to listen with empathy, to let the person get to the problem and the solution at his or her own pace and time. Layer upon layer, it's like peeling an onion until you get to the soft inner core.
They're back.
Yep. He says, as you learn to listen deeply to other people, you will discover tremendous differences in perception. You will also begin to appreciate the impact that these differences can have as people try to work together in an interdependent situation. Kind of what you're dealing with there, Beth. Have y'all seen that that drawing, and then you look at this black and white drawing? Some people see a young woman, other people see an old lady. Who's right? We both are. Everybody is. It's been what they see. Remember those things that were out back in the 80s that you looked at it just kind of you had to kind of almost cross your eyes and a picture would appear. What were those called? You know what I'm talking about? So anyway, it goes through understanding perception with all of our differences, learning to try to work together to manage resources, accomplish results. So how do we do it? How do we transcend the limits of our individual perceptions so that we can deeply communicate, so we can cooperatively deal with the issues and come up with win-win solution? I love it when he ties in the previous habits to a new habit. The answer is habit 5. It's the first step in the process of win-win. Now we're in habit number 5, win-win is habit number 4. So what he's saying is the first step in the process of win-win is habit 5. Seek first to understand, then to be understood. So I find it interesting he put the win-win before the seek first to understand. So he's gone through here. Then he drops that bombshell on us. And then he starts talking about seek, then seek to be understood. Hold on a second here. Couple of stories here. When you can represent your own ideas clearly, specifically, visually, and most important, contextually, in the context of a deep understanding of other people's paradigms and concerns, you significantly increase the credibility of your ideas. You're not wrapped up in your own thing, delivering grandiose rhetoric from a soapbox. You really understand what you're presenting may even be different from what you had originally thought, because in your effort to understand, you learn. Already makes a difference, does it? Doesn't it?
Yeah.
Habit 5 lifts you to a greater accuracy, greater integrity. And people know that. They know you're presenting the ideas that you generally believe, taking all known facts and perceptions into consideration, which will benefit everyone.
Danny, something we haven't talked about in this discussion is the act of thinking that we have the power to change people's thoughts, feelings, and what they believe. And therein lies the controversy in the world, right?
There you go. We can hang up right
it,
now. That's the most important statement I've heard today. Yeah.
I mean, the serenity prayer, you know, people in 12-step groups understand that they can't change anything or anybody. They have to focus on themselves, and they have to make that choice. And it's hard because we live in a very fragmented world today. And the fact that we think, and when it just kills me, and I'm guilty because sometimes I have to chime up but people that are always trying to change people's minds on social media, that's just funny to me, because it's not going to happen. They're set in their ways just like you are, you know, and they're going to always express where they come from and so I just thought I'd throw that in there. I've been thinking about this the whole time you talked about it.
You know, then that applies to what we're going to read next, but it tells us here, it says habit 5 is powerful because it's right in the middle of our circle of influence. So if you go back to chapter 1, remember this?
Right.
Okay. So we've got this circle of influence that's there in the middle. And if our circle of concern, which is if depending where that's coming from, if that's coming from our own mindset, then the influence that we have, it's squeezing down on that. Okay. And he goes into a couple of pages here about that. I wish, like to have him expanded on this, but he said it's the inside out approach. And as you do it, watch what happens to your circle of influence, because you really listen, you become influenceable, and being influenceable is a key to influencing others. So that right there. So the circle of influence squeezes out that circle of concern that's so judgmental. And it's what he calls in the first chapter, first habit, being proactive, it's what he calls a proactive focus. Go ahead, Herdy.
That's a great point, Danny. And that circle of concern and influence is awesome, because that does mean that if we are empathetic listener, if we're asking questions, then we have a chance to influence the other person's thoughts and feelings and what they're communicating, because you are being empathetic toward them. makes them feel comfortable, and maybe gets them thinking about stuff. And you also,
Yeah.
maybe you're not thinking about stuff that you need to think about too. So that's a two-way street, right? That's the two-way street that we need to be on.
Right. I was on a coaching call earlier today with, there were 122 of us on the call, and my intent was to be to listen as much as I could, because we would go into breakout rooms that would last about 10 minutes. And we had 3 breakout rooms, or 4. We had 4 breakout rooms. Each time you were the different person and asked a different question. And I really wanted to hear. So we're in there there were 5 of us, 5 or 6 in most of them. So I didn't have any problem except in one. There's only 3 of us. So I ended up speaking up. They didn't have time in the other ones for everybody to speak, but I wanted to just listen to what other, here's the question. I had my answer to the question, but listening to other people's answers, that whole observational learning model is so powerful. I'm a member of the John Maxwell team. Keep that membership up, just because I can call in almost every night or every day at lunch and listen in on a call. There might be 200 or 300 people on the call, and all I'm doing is listening, and that practice observational learning. Now, my judgment flies in there, not near as much as it did 7 or 8 years ago. My judgment about something, especially when somebody else asks, John or Mark a question, or whoever is teaching that day, asks them a question, and then I immediately I hear myself answering it. It just flashes, right? Then I hear a different answer, and I'm going, well, I didn't think about that. So guys, just finishing up here, going into the application. There's some really, really good stuff here. About this whole circle of influence and circle of concern. And he says, watch what happens to you. The more deeply you understand other people, the more you will appreciate them, the more reverent you will feel about them. To touch the soul of another human being is to walk on holy ground. Habit 5 is something you can practice right now. I'm not going to cover the application suggestions. You got some real good ones right there around the emotional bank account. Sharing the concept of empathy with somebody close to you. The next time you have an opportunity to watch people communicate, cover your ears for a few minutes and just watch. Never done that, but just watch. Next time you catch yourself inappropriately using one of the autobiographical responses, try to turn the situation into a deposit by acknowledgement and apology. And he got here where he would say, I'm sorry, I just realized I'm not really trying to understand. Can we start again? Wow. Go ahead, Hurdy, or was that Tom?
No, I said, wow, that's a pretty lofty goal.
If any of you have anything, not just this chapter, any chapter you want to dig into for 15 or 20 minutes, and let's do a recording of that. Would love to do that. We can just talk about specifics around this. One of the things I found here that this is in the Sun, the new insights. He said habits 4 through 6 seem to overlap. What's the difference? He says habits 4, 5, and 6 are different but work together. Over the years, we've taught students, if I'm saying this right, the mnemonic, root, route, and fruit. Habit 4, think win-win, is a foundation or root of effective relationships. The route for getting there is to practice habit 5. Seek first to understand, then be understood. And the fruit you produce by practicing habits 4 and 5 is the synergy, which is habit 6. Pretty cool. I love it when the stuff connects together. Sometimes when I try empathetic listening, the other person feels like I'm using that technique.
You are. Huh. No, I'm kidding.
Mhm.
Well, no, he kind of says, he said, to generally practice habit 5, you may need the emotional security that comes from first winning the private victory. Takes you back into habits 1, 2, and 3.
So Yvonne used to tell me when we first started dating, she did not like me because I always seemed like I was trying to interview her. So in that pragmatic part of me that asked questions, and she kept saying, quit interviewing me. Stop it. So I get that point. I get that
I was
point.
back.
We
when
try so hard to relate that we end up making them feel like they're being interviewed or in a classroom or something. Kind of weird. But I just thought of that.
Pretty, I get something
Yeah.
out from Diana. If we have a mutual client, she'll go, I don't like the questions you ask. What did I do wrong? They're hard.
All right,
Okay.
guys, Paul Despain, you got the last word.
Oh, I don't have, I'm just, I'm glad you invited me to it and kind of went, I mean, I'm remembering some of the stuff from it. I haven't read it because I've been too busy and I have the book. I just got to find it. I don't know where it's at. So,
Yeah. Guys, I highly recommend, and I know, I mean, when I really want to dig into something, I want to turn the page, but also I've got it on digital. One thing I liked about digital is I can read more in more places. I read more, but I also can look things up, look words up and find something, there. But the Audible, I get it from a different perspective when you're listening to
Yeah.
it. And, I think I've told y'all the first book I listened to on Audible was C.S. Lewis's Mere Christianity. It was a book that I've had for years, tried to read, couldn't read it, just couldn't get into it, read through it, but couldn't tell you anything about it. Just didn't, all the sentences didn't connect. And I heard John Piper talk about listening to books this 7 or 8 years ago. And I went, the first book was free. And I thought, I'm going to buy Mere Christianity. And I took off on a walk and I turned around, came home and picked up the book. So this is not the same book. I thought I bought another, I don't know what I did. And it was the exact same book. And, but all of a sudden I heard it and now I can read it and get it. Just needed that connection. Guys, I appreciate it. See you, Beth. Hope those nails turn out well.
All heard it, Dan.
Bye. Hey, wait a minute. Tom, tonight,
Yeah.
am I going to see you tonight?
Yes, sir. I hope so.
Yep, at Flores. Okay, see you then. Bye.
You bet.